Today, our topic is the Nanking government under Chiang Kai-Shek 1928 to 1937. After suppressing the communist organizations of Shanghai and the leftist government of Yuan, Chiang Kai-Shek, the Kuomintang leader and the leader of the Nationalist Party, had set up a central government in Nanking in 1927. The days of warlordism was over. Chiang Kai-shek wanted to follow the legacy of Dr. Sun Yat-sen for a national reconstruction. In fact, Sun Yat-sen was the Kuomintang leader under whose leadership the Republican Revolution of 1911 took place. The Nanking government had made certain achievement and progress in the fields of finance, communication, industrial development and education, but it grossly neglected the socio-economic reforms of the country and it took a policy of irresponsible fiscal deficit. Financial reforms. The Nanking government introduced a paper currency called Fa-Pi as the legal tender. In fact, tael was abolished and it was substituted by a silver dollar. But in the early 1930s, China was saddled with a serious crisis. The price of silver increased in the world market, leading to rapid outflow of silver from China. Thus, the very basis of the new currency was shattered, and for that reason, they decided to do one thing. Because Chinese economy was faced with some serious problems due to devaluation of silver currency. The drain gave rise to inflation, there was high interest rates, there was stagnancy in real estate and bankruptcies of enterprises and industries. For that reason, the Nanking government decided to nationalize silver and introduced Fa-Pi as the new paper currency. The government of Nanking had set up 4 nationalized banks. Number 1, the central bank. It was entrusted with the task of maintaining currency system. 2, Bank of Communication, which was assigned to look after domestic industries and enterprises. Number 3, Farmers Bank of China, which handled rural credit. And number 4, the Bank of China, which directed foreign exchanges. For the first time in the history of China, foreign exchange came to be controlled by a nationalized bank. Tariff autonomy. In fact, during the days of the enclaved economy, China did not enjoy any tariff autonomy. Western imperialist powers like Great Britain, France, United States of America and Germany, they would impose tariffs on the Chinese goods. But on 7th July 1928, Chiang Kai-Shek announced that from now on the Nanking government would enjoy tariff autonomy and the government would impose tariff on the Chinese goods. He made a series of agreements with the Western imperialist powers and declared that from now on tariff autonomy would be enjoyed by China alone. The concessions enjoyed by the Western imperialist powers came to an end. Transport and communication. Reforms in the spheres of transport and communication during the Nanking regime was glaring. A Ministry of Railway was set up. In 1928, there was a railway network of about 8,000 kilometers. In 1937, it increased up to 13,000 kilometers. Long highways were constructed and several bridges on several rivers were built. The post and telegraph system improved a lot and long distance telephone lines were laid in several parts of China. Industrial development. As far as industrial development in the spheres of big industry was concerned, that was not very praiseworthy. The growth in big industries was not at all spectacular during the Nanking regime, but in the field of light industries such as cotton weaving, flour production, matches, cement and chemical manufacturing, China under the Nanking government of Chiang Kai-Shek made a spectacular progress. Educational reforms. In fact, the Nanking government under Chiang Kai-Shek made a series of educational reforms. About 13 central universities, 9 provincial universities and 5 technical colleges had been set up in China. Huge amount of subsidies had been released from the government coffer to improve the teaching learning process as well as for purchasing equipment by the educational institutions. School education was also not neglected. A large number of normal schools, middle schools and professional schools had been set up by the government with a total enrollment of about 5,50,000 students. Literary activities. In fact, the time of the Nanking government witnessed an outburst of literary skill and excellence in China. There were so many Chinese authors and scholars who produced innumerable pieces of literature. There was outburst of skill and literary excellence in China. But one thing we should remember that the role of government patronage in this regard was very minimum. Most of the intellectuals and writers during that period believed in the leftist ideology. Some of them were the members of the Communist Party of China and some of them were sympathetic to the leftist ideology. They were very much hostile to the Chiang Kai-Shek government at Nanking. So, they were very critical of the Nanking government. Among the most prominent authors during that period were Lu Xun and Mao Tun. Both Lu Xun and Mao Tun created some important pieces of literature to ornament the treasure chest of Chinese literature. Neglect of socio-economic reforms. The Nanking regime was never interested in a long-term socio-economic reform which could bring stability to the Chinese society and economy as a whole. The rulers grossly ignored the age-old problem of landlordism in China. They showed scant sympathy to the interest of the peasantry who constituted about 80% of the total population in China. The most cardinal defect lay with the government was the problem of land distribution. In fact, majority of the land were concentrated in the hands of the new warlords and the rural gentry with whom Chiang Kai-Shek had made a compromise. In fact, the Nanking government was heavily dependent on the feudal landlords and the urban bourgeoisie. Thus, the interest of the peasants were always neglected. Huge amount of land tax and surtax were imposed on the peasantry and the surtax ranged from 35% to 350%. So, the condition of the peasants gradually became precarious. Dr. Sun Yat-sen believed in the ideology of land to the tiller, but this principle of Dr. Sun was not followed by the Chiang Kai-shek's government. Rural indebtedness increased to a maximum extent. Furthermore, Dr. Sun Yat-sen was always in favor of a radical land reform with proper land distribution, but Sun's ideas in this regard was not implemented. In fact, Kuomintang party under Chiang Kai-shek was turned into a party of rural conservatism and feudal order. The Kuomintang and the labor, the working class of China, I mean the laboring poor, they were very much influenced by the communist ideology. Most of the working class people were under the banner of the Communist Party of China. There were certain red unions which organized strikes against the government as well as against their employers. But the Chiang Kai-Shek regime and the regime of the Nanking government brutally suppressed the strikes of the workers. In fact, labor conditions in China continued to be characterized by low wages, unstable employment, oppression by overseers and gangsters, long working hours, and precarious living conditions, including housing. Fiscal irresponsibility. The fiscal system of the Nanking government revealed the fundamental character of the regime. In fact, there was no income tax during the Nanking government in China, which was a relief for the propertied classes as a whole, particularly the urban propertied classes. Number 2, legion or the internal trade duty was abolished, which proved advantageous for the business community, particularly of the urban area. 25% of the revenue would come from the loan to the Chinese financial markets. During the rule of Chiang Kai-Shek, there was a steady flourish of the stock exchanges and stock markets, giving rise to an enormous class of speculators. Heavy land tax was levied on the peasants. Particularly, ordinary peasants were highly taxed, but the rural gentry, who were generally the landlords, they were exempted from any kind of taxation. They were rarely taxed. Furthermore, huge amount of indirect taxes were imposed in the items like flour, salt, tobacco, and edible oil, and the entire burden fell on the common people. And this irresponsible fiscal system actually gave rise to a very deficit financing in China, which left a disastrous impact on the Chinese economy. Ideology of the Nanking government. The Nanking government was purely a conservative government. The conservative ideology of the government was enshrined in the New Life movement launched by Chiang Kai-Shek. In fact, Chiang Kai-Shek published the New Life manifesto in several areas, particularly in such areas where communists were very much active. The New Life movement and the New Life manifesto revealed a clear idea of conservatism in China. Neo-Confucianism was emphasized. Christianity, particularly Protestant Puritanism, was very much revealed, particularly when the state instructed the girls not to keep short hairs and not to use short dresses. Furthermore, there were some traits of fascism in the ideology of the New Life movement. In fact, mass meetings were organized imitating the Nuremberg rallies of Hitler. Chiang Kai-Shek would always like to say that hard work and discipline were keys to the success of fascist Italy and Nazi Germany. Particularly, the Chiang Kai-Shek government also believed in the fascist, and fascism was always prevalent in the ideology of the government. An assessment of the Nanking government. In fact, historians have held divergent views in their assessment of the Nanking government as well as in their appraisal of the activities and attitudes of the government. One of the greatest historians on East Asia, John Fairbank, was aware of the problems and shortcomings of the government, but finally he stated that it was the most modern government China had ever known. Lucien Bianco, another important historian, stated, quote, "The government took a lot of positive steps and its deficiencies were less terrifying than the problems it confronted," unquote. Another historian, Jack Gray, was also of full praise of the Nanking government and state that the government could solve many of its problems. But Emmanuel Shu wanted to take a middle path. He said that in the field of education, industry, transport and communication there was some progress, but the government grossly neglected the socio-economic reforms and it undertook a fiscal policy of deficit spending. However, Jacques Cheno, the most eminent sinologist of our time, refuted most of the above views. According to Cheno, the nature of the Nanking government was purely conservative. All the measures government took were the conservative measures. The government, in fact, stood on a coalition between the landed gentry, rural feudal lords on one hand and the urban bourgeoisie on the other. Actually, the popular forces were not with the Nanking government. The popular forces at that time were with the Communist Party of China. The Nanking government believed in the military power. When the popular forces revolted against the military power of the government, they were brutally opposed and suppressed by the Nanking government under Chiang Kai-Shek. Particularly the common people wanted to raise the banner of protest under the leadership of the Communist Party of China, that is CPC. The government suppressed the popular opinion by applying force and neglected the economic interest of the masses. The main architect of the Nanking government was the nationalist Kuomintang leader Chiang Kai-Shek. In his early life, Chiang Kai-Shek was a broker in the Shanghai stock market and Shanghai Stock Exchange. By way of his relationship with the Shanghai Stock Exchange, he developed a relationship with the Western financial interest. Furthermore, his matrimonial relations strengthened his connection with the financial advisors and financial tycoons of the Chinese economic system. Particularly, two of his brothers-in-law were tycoons and they were prominent members of the Chinese finance. So, it was but natural that he would always try to cater to the interest of the propertied classes and would not look after the needs and demands of the ordinary and common people of China. We may conclude, following the conclusion of a famous historian Emmanuel Shu. Shu observed, quote, "The nationalist government appeared stronger than it really was. A superficial observer might readily say that a new China was emerging out of the horizon," unquote. He was right. Some serious fundamental problems remained prevalent in the Nanking system of government. These were social and economic injustices and chronic ill of deficit spending. The most cardinal problem lay with the Kuomintang government of Nanking was that it lacked any popular support. In fact, majority of the people of China, particularly poor working class and poor peasantry of China and the middle class even, they were all with the Communist Party of China. During the late 30s, the Communist Party of China took an active role as an opposition party. On the final assessment, it may be said that the Kuomintang government of Nanking under Chiang Kai-Shek was a conservative government and it was an anti-people government. In fact, in 1937, when the days of the Nanking government came to an end, we saw that there was a Japanese invasion against China. In the wake of the Japanese invasion, the Communist Party of China took a much more vital and important role in resisting the Japanese aggression than the Kuomintang Party. And the communists finally got the dividend, and within 12 years only, in 1949, the People's Republic of China was born under the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party. Thank you.